Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about democratizing data, which is a core trend in artificial intelligence and data analytics these days. And we'll look at how this affects application development in particular. To discuss that, I'm joined by Torsten Grabs, Senior Director of Product Management at Snowflake. Torsten, happy Friday to you, and thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks, James, and happy Friday to you as well.
So I want to ask you a question that's almost so big it can't be answered. I want to ask you about what trends are driving data and AI these days. And I think the problem with that question is that there's about 18 different trends and they're all going every which way. So like the answer to that question alone could be like four hours. But I'd say if there's just one or two trends that you see, being as close to the market as you are, one or two trends driving data analytics and AI these days, what are the most compelling, say one or two as you see it?
Yeah. So maybe the first one that comes to mind is about seeing more of the data science work and ML work actually getting productionized and rolled out to the end users so that really the business eventually benefits from all the work that is being done by machine learning data science teams. And there is still a lot of challenges for data science practitioners to actually see their work through all the way to the end, to getting productized in an organization. So that is a big challenge still, and we can talk about why that is and what needs to happen in order to overcome those challenges. I think the other big trend that I see, and it's somewhat related to that, is also the progress that is currently being made in the industry with generative AI and large language models. And I call them as related because they also have a great potential to make AI more accessible for non-technical or less technical users in an organization. Mm-hmm. So those two themes are maybe broadly speaking the ones that I see and that also keep me up at night and are challenging me to also help our users and customers.
Yeah, I mean, generative AI, I mean, first of all, you get 5,000 bonus points for saying the phrase, because I think every conversation these days has got to use the phrase generative AI. If not, like, what's the point? Because it's just so hot. But I also really resonate with what you're saying in terms of keeping you up at night. I don't know I think the industry is thrilled, even the consumer world is thrilled, but everyone's kind of thrilled and a little scared at the same time. Like, wow, what's going to happen? What jobs are going to be affected? Like, there's all of that going on. Again, that's a huge question, but can you give a sense of like generative AI threat or promise?
I think it's a hugely promising space. I would also say we are still very early on in the process of embracing it and understanding all of its implications. Mm-hmm. So I would expect that there a lot of things are still playing out as we're making progress on the innovations there. One thing that comes to mind is just a huge potential that I see to make computer use more broadly much easier for less technical users. And that may also help with the aspect that we just touched on for data scientists and machine learning practitioners. It may make the consumption of machine learning technology much easier because you have a more interactive way to get guided through day-to-day user experiences that otherwise would have required a much more technical team to help you out with, right? And you could ask those questions a large language model based agent, and that agent might eventually be able to completely independently guide you through a particular business problem that you have to solve, right? And that's I think where a lot of the potential sits, is to empower more users to be really productive with data, with computer technology. Now, having said this, I think there is still a number of open questions that we have to solve in the industry. And a lot of them tie back to some of the social implications of what's going to happen, but also technical aspects around security and compliance. Right now, if you are in an organization that has sensitive data, I would caution you to be very, very careful which pieces of your data you actually want to send into a large language model that's hosted by someone else as a service in the cloud, right? You may have privacy obligations that are not necessarily satisfied by the LLM agent or by the generative AI system that you're interacting with. And I think that's something that the industry just has to grapple with and solve, which will happen over time. Mm-hmm. But right now we are in the early phases, and I think people should try out and see the benefits, but be careful and cautious about like what pieces of data are they sending where.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that a company employee could possibly, provide a sensitive piece of data to a generative AI platform. Who knows what exactly is going to happen with that data? Yeah, a clear caution, no doubt.
Yes.
All right. The idea of democratizing data, which you've sort of talked about in a larger sense. I mean, we know it means, not just the C-suite, not just the data scientists have access to the data, but actually all the staffers, the sales folks, all the managers. Really, the democratizing of data is one of, I think, a big mega trend running through AI these days. Democratizing data. Could you talk about that a little bit? What that means to you and how you see that taking shape?
Yeah. So one big aspect that I obviously see there is the data cloud, which makes it so much easier for everyone, every organization to get access to more data and also more relevant data for their specific business problems. And that means your own first-party data that's easier to work with, but also third-party data that you can consume from a marketplace or data from business partners that you want to collaborate over, right? So that, just from a technology perspective, is a much easier problem right now, where in the past you had to deal with like sending files over FTP from one organization to another. That is no longer necessary, right? So, and that opens up just a more collaborative way to interact across cross-company value chains with shared data assets. Now, having said this, obviously, again, I already alluded that in the context of generative AI, there are certain privacy obligations that organizations have, and you have to satisfy those in the data cloud as well, which is why you want to make sure that your permissions and entitlements and things like that are well-defined, even in the context of collaborating over data in the data cloud. And there are ways to do that in a meaningful way through, for instance, data clean rooms, where you have very clear guarantees around sensitive data and what can be seen versus what cannot be seen by different organizations that come together in a data clean room. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I think the other key change that's happening is in terms of programming languages that are becoming popular. Python is becoming increasingly popular also for, let's say, analysts and advanced analysts, and that's going to help a broader community in businesses and organizations to become really productive with data. There's a lot of packages in the open source community around Python that are primarily dealing with data analytics and data processing, and that now will become available for a much broader user population. And the interesting aspects then are also, how can we help developers and advanced analysts become more productive with Python, and how can we then also help those people to shape their Python programs in a way so that even a non-technical end user can leverage them in a business. And there, a key step that we're looking at is Streamlit, which has the ability to essentially wrap around a piece of Python code. That could be, for example, a machine learning model that a data scientist has implemented in Python. And now you want to share this with business users. Obviously, you cannot just simply share a Jupyter container with a bunch of Python code in a notebook. That wouldn't be approachable for, let's say, a marketing manager or a line manager in a large organization. But if you wrap that in a Streamlit application with clear user interfaces, visualizations that are approachable for the end user, with the ability to provide input and interact with an application in a meaningful way, that creates now an opening for these data scientists or machine learning practitioners to operate in Python, but then wrap their results through a Streamlit application that makes it so much more approachable for an end user in an organization. So we see that as a big opportunity. on that first challenge that I hinted at, which is how can we make sure that more work from data science and machine learning practitioners gets successfully productized in an organization, and having a meaningful way for end users to interact with the result of your machine learning practice through something like Streamlit is really crucial to accomplish that goal.
Let me make sure I understand about Streamlit. Streamlit versus containers, same idea, similar idea? Could you explain that, please?
Oh no, they're very different. I mean, a container gives you a great way to package a runtime environment and code in it, and it's a very popular environment for ML practitioners to just do their day-to-day work. Sure. But still, in the end, the result of what you do in the container is a piece of Python code, and that is then what you would lift into a Streamlit application in order to make it accessible for an end user. If that makes sense.
All right, well, let's talk about the Snowflake product offering. What is Snowflake's Snowpark? How does that help people?
Yeah, it helps people in multiple ways. So Snowpark, first of all, is infrastructure that allows us to host programming language runtimes natively on Snowflake Compute. And that infrastructure has allowed us to first launch Java virtual machines as a coprocessor running on Snowflake Compute natively. And that same infrastructure is what we are also now using to support Python natively on Snowflake Compute. And that's kind of the server-side extensibility part of Snowpark, if you want. In addition to that, the server-side capabilities are complemented by an SDK on the client side that provides developers with a familiar abstraction, mostly, I'd say, a data frame concept that has become very popular through Pandas or Spark, which allows them to, in a more declarative way, express the data processing that they would like to do over the data set that sits in Snowflake. That becomes a very convenient way to write very powerful data transformation, data processing applications in Python, but also in Java and Spark. And we take literally the programs that you've written in the client side through those APIs and then render them as a distributed parallel execution plan that runs on the server-side pieces of Snowpark.
Mm-hmm. Other Snowflake product highlights? What's going on with Snowflake these days that we should know about?
Yeah, there are a couple of interesting pieces. So first of all, Snowpark for Python has been in GA for some time, but we keep adding additional capabilities to that, and we're obviously looking at our upcoming Summit conference this summer in June. And in addition to that, something that's actually very relevant in this context of productizing machine learning and data science is our native applications framework. You can think of it as a way to package code and data of a Snowflake application in a meaningful way so that you can put it up on the marketplace as a Snowflake application that then a Snowflake customer can consume and install into their Snowflake account. And that also is a great way now for machine learning practitioners to take a machine learning model that they might have implemented in Snowpark with Python, that they have created a Streamlit UI for. If they package all of that through a native application, they then have the ability to put that on the marketplace. And literally every Snowflake customer, if they wanted, could consume that native application from the marketplace and install it into their account. So that has the potential now, kind of thinking specifically about machine learning and data science, to create a marketplace for machine learning models where those could become native applications in the marketplace that can be consumed and installed by a much larger audience. And the marketplace infrastructure then also gives the providers of these machine learning models the ability to track usage across Snowflake customers, and then also monetize that, essentially bill for the usage of the machine learning models that they see through other Snowflake customers on the marketplace. So that is one key area. We already talked about Streamlit.
Can I interrupt you for a second? That's an interesting idea. Is the idea of the marketplace for machine learning models that does exist, or is it being built? Please explain that a little bit, if you would.
So the marketplace exists, and primarily the focus right now is through the data cloud to provide a marketplace for data where people collaborate over data.
Okay.
But the next step for us is to take that beyond data and apply the same principles to code, to applications. And that really depends on the ability to package and publish code in a meaningful way into the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what we're building this native application framework for. It is currently in private preview. So it's being used by a smaller number of customers. And we're working towards releasing that later this calendar year, and then it will be more broadly accessible.
That's interesting because I think about pre-built models as being one of the hottest things that's going on in machine learning and AI, because companies don't want to build it themselves. They can't build themselves. So they really rely heavily on pre-built, prefabricated models. So be curious to see what happens when that marketplace actually opens up to the general tech public. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I think the big question is that the future of artificial intelligence and data analytics on Snowflake or in general. I mean, what do you see? What's coming on Snowflake, and what do you see larger in the industry?
Yeah, so I think the two trends that we are seeing, kind of coming back to the challenges that I mentioned in the opening. The one is really about making data science and ML practitioners more effective in an organization, seeing more machine learning models getting successfully deployed and delivering meaningful business value in organizations. That is going to be an important topic for us going forward. And with some of the pieces that we touched on in our conversation, we hope to actually make progress from a Snowflake front and help the industry on that front. And the other aspect is obviously around generative AI, large language models, and how are they going to shift the dynamics between more technical teams and less technical teams. There's a lot of work still to be done for everyone in the industry. We are working towards a number of these capabilities. I touched on the native application framework, Streamlit running natively on Snowflake compute, interoperability over data through embracing Iceberg as a data standard for your data lakes. So those are all areas that we are actively working on. And I think the next milestone for us here is our user conference, the Snowflake Summit in June. And there we'll have more to tell about everything that's happening on all of these fronts that I just mentioned.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned the conference. That's going to be interesting. The last question, it's about data and being cloud agnostic. I'm not even sure how to ask a question. Let me fumble through this. So I know that Snowflake is, of course, cloud agnostic, which is one of its claims to fame. And not all platforms are cloud agnostic or proprietary agnostic. And yet some of them do quite well, being not necessarily, completely open platforms. I guess, do you see the future of data and AI being really completely open, or will this proprietary model still be really strong?
I think it's a great question. So first of all, I think on the data side of things, the open model is the one that will succeed eventually, because otherwise organizations will just find too many hurdles in terms of getting access to a business partner's data that may reside on a different cloud in a different region. Mm-hmm. And at some point, this becomes prohibitive, and it becomes a competitive disadvantage if you cannot collaborate over your data. So I think on that front, the right pressure, the right incentives are in place to continue to open up that environment for data collaboration. Now, on some aspects where I think there's a lot of innovation happening, there, at least for some time, I'm convinced that we're actually going to be seeing some proprietary advances. So think about like the large language model space, where I think having the best large language model in the industry is seen as a competitive advantage. And that may put pressures in the system to keep that proprietary. Mm-hmm. Until there is enough demand from customers that are saying, no, I want this on my cloud, or I want to run this actually close to where my data processing happens. And that then over time will create enough demand and enough pressure on the proprietary vendors to open up their ecosystem and make their capabilities more broadly accessible.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Can you say who you think has the largest language model this time, or is that a forbidden question?
Um, I think it's going to change probably on a monthly or maybe even weekly basis.
Interesting. Okay.
I think right now, clearly, the major cloud providers are on the forefront of the innovation there, and there are a few smaller startups that are also highly competitive in that space. So it's interesting to see and watch over the next couple of months to see how that plays out.
Yeah, a lot of activity, a lot of people working a lot of hours in that particular area, no doubt about it. Torsten, you said it. That was fascinating. I learned a ton. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you come back and talk with us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James. Appreciate it.